My father promised to introduce me to his wealthy investor friend Matthew to launch my life's work. Instead, he ghosted me and sent my sister, Maria, to pitch my code as her own. She got the $400,000 check. I got a text. They forgot I control the kill switch. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The notification sound on my phone usually meant a server alert or a reminder to drink water. But today, at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, it sounded like a gavel coming down on my life. I was sitting in my car, parked 3 blocks away from the glass-paneled monstrosity that housed Matthew's venture capital firm. I had been there for 45 minutes, sweating through the blazer I had bought specifically for this meeting. My laptop bag was sitting on the passenger seat, buckled in like a child. Inside that bag was Logicore, a proprietary inventory management AI that I had spent the last 3 years building in the dark, quiet corners of my apartment while my friends got married, bought houses, and went on vacations. I checked the time again, 2:15 p.m. The meeting was supposed to be at 2:00 p.m. My father, Andrew, was supposed to meet me in the lobby at 1:45 p.m. "Just bring the tech, Emma," he had told me a week ago, his voice booming with that charismatic confidence that had charmed half the city but usually left his family with a migraine. "I've known Matthew for 20 years. You don't need to sell him. I'll do the talking. You just show him the magic." I had called him 6 times in the last half hour, straight to voicemail. I had texted him, "Dad, I'm here. Where are you? The security guy won't let me up without you." Nothing. I wiped my clammy palms on my slacks, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A sickening thought began to crawl up my throat, a physical sensation of dread that tasted like metallic bile. Had he been in an accident? Was he lying in a ditch somewhere? My phone buzzed again, not a text, an Instagram notification. Maria M. has posted a new photo. My thumb hovered over the screen. Maria, my older sister, the golden child, the one who worked in brand strategy, which as far as I could tell meant she went to expensive lunches and told people to change their font colors. We hadn't spoken in 2 weeks, mostly because I had been in a coding hole, finalizing the demo for today. I tapped the notification. The image loaded, high resolution and blindingly bright. It was taken inside a conference room, a corner office with a view of the skyline, Matthew's office. I recognized the art on the walls from the website. In the center of the photo stood Matthew, the investor, looking impressed, holding a glass of champagne. Next to him, beaming with a smile that showed all her perfect, veneered teeth, was Maria. She was wearing a suit that looked suspiciously like the one I had told her I wanted to buy, and in her hand, she was holding a signed term sheet. But it was the caption that made the world stop spinning. "So proud to announce that after months of hard work, I've officially secured pre-seed funding for my new venture, Logicore. Huge thanks to Matthew for believing in my vision. Boss babe, tech founder, startup life." I stared at the screen. The words blurred, swam, and then snapped back into razor-sharp focus. My venture, my name, my code. I couldn't breathe. It felt like the air in the car had been sucked out into a vacuum. I looked at the timestamp of the post 3 minutes ago. While I was sitting in the parking lot, hyperventilating and worrying that my father was dead, my sister was upstairs in the room I was supposed to be in, selling the product I built to the man I was supposed to meet. Then the text came. It popped up over the Instagram photo, a gray banner of doom. "Dad, Emma, go home. Don't come up. We made a game-time decision. Maria just seemed more ready for the room than you. We'll discuss your equity share later. This is a win for the family." I dropped the phone. It clattered against the center console, screen up, the words glowing in the dim light of the parking garage. More ready. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt a coldness wash over me, starting at my fingertips and freezing my blood as it moved toward my heart. It was the numbness of shock, the anesthesia before the surgery. He hadn't just stood me up. He had stolen my life. He had taken the 3 years of missed sleep, the anxiety attacks, the isolation, and he had handed it to Maria like a party favor because she seemed more ready. I looked at the dashboard. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't grip the steering wheel. "Hey." "Win for the family," I whispered to the empty car. My voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to a ghost. I looked back at the phone. Dad was typing again. "Dad, don't make a scene, Emma. Trust me on this." The betrayal wasn't just that they did it. It was that they thought so little of me, they assumed I would just take it. They thought I was just the mechanic, the grease monkey behind the curtain who would be grateful for whatever scraps they threw my way. But as I stared at Maria's smiling face on the screen, a strange, dark clarity settled over me. The panic receded, replaced by a cold, mathematical precision. They had the term sheet, they had the money, they had the investor. But there was one thing they didn't have. I reached over and patted the laptop bag. "You forgot the keys, Dad," I said, my voice steady now. "You forgot the keys." The drive home was a blur of red lights and honking horns that I barely registered. I felt like I was piloting a mech suit rather than driving a sedan. My body was just a vessel for the cold, hard rage that was calcifying in my chest. When I got to my apartment, a shoebox studio where my desk took up 60% of the living space, I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, staring at the glowing monitors of my workstation. The hum of the cooling fans was the only sound in the room, a familiar lullaby that usually brought me peace. Today, it sounded like a countdown. My phone had been vibrating incessantly for the last hour. 7 missed calls from Mom, who was probably calling to congratulate me on our success, completely oblivious. 3 more texts from Andrew, none from Maria. I finally picked up the phone. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear them say it. I dialed Andrew. He answered on the second ring, his voice loud and jovial, with background noise of clinking glasses and laughter. They were celebrating. They were at lunch. "Emma," he boomed, "I'm glad you called. Listen, I know you're probably a little confused, but—" "Confused?" I cut him off. My voice was quiet, dangerously level. "I'm not confused, Andrew. I'm sitting in my apartment while you and Maria are drinking champagne on my dime." The background noise quieted slightly. He must have stepped away from the table. "Don't call me Andrew, I'm your father, and look, you need to see the big picture here. Matthew is particular, he buys people, not just products. Maria has that charisma. She speaks the language, you know how you get when you're nervous. You stutter. You get bogged down in the technical details. We couldn't risk blowing the deal. So you gave her my company." "It's not your company, Emma," he snapped, his tone shifting from jovial to sharp. "It's a family endeavor. I paid for your server costs last year, didn't I? I introduced you to the network. This is a team effort. Maria is the CEO, you're the CTO. It makes sense. She handles the people, you handle the typing. You're still going to get paid. I got her to agree to give you 5%. 5%, I repeated. The number hung in the air like a bad joke. I wrote every line of code. I designed the architecture. I built the AI model. And you think I'm worth 5%. 5% of something huge is better than 100% of nothing, which is what you had this morning, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Stop being selfish. Be happy for your sister. She's finally found her footing. She needed a win. She needed a win. Maria, who had dropped out of 3 different colleges. Maria, who had borrowed $5,000 from me 2 years ago to start a jewelry line that never launched. Maria, who had never written a line of code in her life. "Put her on," I said. "Emma, don't ruin this." "Put her on." There was a rustling sound, and then Maria's voice came on the line. She sounded breathless, giddy. Oh my God, can you believe it? Matthew loves the concept. He thinks it's going to disrupt the entire supply chain industry. The concept, I said. You mean the software I built? Well, yeah, the software, she breezed past it. But the vision, Em, that's what he bought. We're going to be rich. Dad said you might be mad about the switch up, but honestly, it was so last minute. I barely had time to memorize the pitch deck you made. Good slides, by the way, a little dry, but I spiced them up. You pitched my deck. Our deck, she corrected. Anyway, we're going to need to start the beta testing next week. Matthew wants to see the live data integration at the launch party on Friday. So, I need you to send over the login credentials for the admin panel and the source files. Matthew's due diligence team wants to review the IP ownership, so we just need to transfer the copyright to the new LLC Dad set up. I closed my eyes. They really thought it was that simple. They thought the tech was just a file you emailed, like a Word document. They didn't understand that Logicore. E wasn't just a program. It was a living ecosystem that required constant maintenance, and more importantly, it was encrypted with a handshake protocol that only verified against my biometric signature. You need the login credentials, I said softly. Yeah, just text them to me. Oh, and M, maybe clean up the interface a bit before Friday. Matthew said the UI looked a little utilitarian. Make it pop. I looked at my monitors. I looked at the 3 years of coffee stains on my desk. I looked at the picture of the three of us from 10 years ago before I realized that in this family, I was the fuel and they were the fire. Sure, Maria, I said. I'll get right on that. Thanks, sweetie, you're the best, see. Teamwork. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the room wrapping around me. They thought they had won. They thought they had extracted the gold and left the mine. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Logicore wasn't hosted on a cloud server they had access to. It was hosted on a decentralized private cluster that I paid for. And the product they pitched, it was a demo version, a shell. Without the encryption key, which resided solely on the encrypted USB drive currently hanging from my keychain, the software was nothing but a fancy calculator. They wanted a show on Friday. I opened my terminal and typed a single command line. Initiate lockdown protocol. I'll give you a show, I whispered. To understand why this betrayal felt like a physical amputation, you have to understand the dynamic of the house of Andrew. Our mother died when I was 12 and Maria was 14. Andrew, our father, didn't mourn her so much as he reorganized his assets. He was a serial entrepreneur, which is a fancy way of saying he was addicted to starting businesses that failed within 18 months. He had tried real estate, boutique coffee roasting, crypto mining, and high-end pet grooming. Through it all, Maria was his mirror. She had his blonde hair, his easy smile, and his absolute allergy to hard work. She was the cheerleader, the prom queen, the one who could charm a teacher into changing a grade. Andrew adored her because she was the version of himself that looked good on a Christmas card. I was the anomaly. Dark hair, quiet, obsessed with how things worked. While Maria was out at parties, I was taking apart the toaster to see the heating element. When I taught myself Python at 16, Andrew asked if I could use it to hack his competitors. When I said no, he lost interest. I became the utility player in their lives. When Andrew's coffee shop website crashed, Emma fixed it. When Maria needed a 20-page paper on sociology for her sophomore year, Emma wrote it. I did it because I wanted their approval. I wanted Andrew to look at me the way he looked at Maria, like I was a prize. But I was never the prize. I was the maintenance crew. The resentment had been building like sediment in a pipe for years, but Logicore was supposed to be my exit ticket. It was my idea. I had come up with it while working a miserable logistics job during college, watching trucks leave half empty because of inefficient routing. I spent 3 years building it. I burned through my savings. I ate ramen. I skipped holidays. When I finished the beta, I went to Andrew. Not for money, but for a connection. He had always bragged about his college roommate, Matthew, who had become a big-shot VC. "Dad," I had said, showing him the dashboard on my laptop. "This works. It actually works. If I can just get 5 minutes with Matthew." I remembered the look in his eyes. It wasn't pride. It was calculation. He looked at my software the way a wolf looks at a wounded deer, as an opportunity. "I can make that happen, Emma," he had said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "But you have to let me guide you. These investors, they eat people like you alive. You're too honest, you need polish." I thought he meant he wanted to coach me. I didn't realize he meant he wanted to replace me. Now looking back, the signs were all there. 2 weeks ago, Andrew had started asking weird questions. "Where is the source code actually stored, Emma? Is it on GitHub? Is it safe?" "It's on a private server, Dad. It's safe." "And the IP? Have you filed the patents yet?" "I have the provisional patent filed. The full filing is expensive. I was waiting for funding." Good, smart girl. He wasn't checking on my security. He was checking for vulnerabilities. He wanted to know if the theft would be clean. And Maria, she had been surprisingly interested in my boring computer stuff lately, asking to see the slide deck, asking me to explain the USB, unique selling proposition, over and over again until she could recite it. "I just want to understand what my little sister does," she had chirped, sitting on my couch, drinking my wine. She was studying, she was rehearsing. They had planned this. This wasn't a me-time decision, like Andrew claimed in his text. This was a premeditated coup. The most dangerous thing about Andrew wasn't his malice, it was his delusion. He genuinely believed that he was helping. In his twisted mind, giving the company to Maria was the smart business move, and giving me 5% was generous. He saw me as a resource to be managed, not a human being to be respected. And Maria, she was worse. She believed she deserved it. She believed that her ability to sell the idea was just as valuable, no, more valuable, than the ability to create it. She looked at my 3 years of blood, sweat, and code, and she saw a stepping stone for her personal brand. I looked at the clock. It was 6:00 p.m. The launch party was in 3 days. They expected me to roll over. They expected me to send the credentials, fix the UI, and fade into the background like I always did. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a fresh hard drive. I wasn't going to fade. I was going to burn brightly, blindingly, and violently. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Maria. "Me, congrats, sis. You guys are right. You're the CEO. I'll send over the credentials tonight. I'm just happy to be part of the team." I hit send. Let them think they won. Let them build the stage. Let them invite the audience. Because when they flipped the switch on Friday, they weren't going to get a product launch. They were going to get a lesson in ownership. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity that usually only comes after a fever breaks. The crushing weight of betrayal was still there, sitting on my chest like a granite slab, but it was no longer paralyzing. It was fuel. I had sent Maria the credentials late last night. Of course, I hadn't sent her the actual admin keys. I had sent her a guest access login that I had hard-coded to look like the administrator dashboard. It had all the buttons: deploy, system health, user management, but none of them were connected to the backend. It was a digital potency pill. It looked like the real thing, but it did absolutely nothing. At 9:00 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Maria. "Maria got the login. Thanks, Em. I'm playing around with it now. It looks great. Can you change the color of the header to a softer blue? Andrew thinks the current navy is too aggressive." I stared at the screen. She was playing around with it, blissfully unaware that she was pressing buttons on a disconnected toy dashboard. Me, sure thing. I'll push the update in an hour. "Maria, you're the best." Oh, and Matthew's legal team sent over the IP transfer docs. I forwarded them to your email. Just sign and scan them back ASAP. We need it clear for the party. I opened my email. There it was. A document titled Intellectual Property Assignment and Transfer Agreement. I opened the PDF. It was draconian. It transferred all rights, titles, and interests in the software known as Logicor to a newly formed entity, AMR Ventures, LLC. The signatories for AMR Ventures were Maria and Andrew. My name was listed only on the signature line for the assigner. In exchange for my life's work, the document offered me a promissory note for $5,000 and future equity considerations to be determined by the board. The board, of course, being Maria and Andrew. They weren't even giving me the 5% Andrew had mentioned on the phone. They were erasing me completely. I needed help. I was a coder, not a shark. I called the only person I knew who understood the Shark Tank, Sarah. We had gone to college together. While I dropped out of the social scene to code, she had gone to law school and was now a junior associate at a firm that specialized in IP litigation. "Buy me coffee," she said when I called, "and tell me everything." We met at a dive bar across town, far away from the polished glass of the financial district. I laid it all out: the meeting, the Instagram post, the locked server, the sham contract. Sarah listened, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. She didn't interrupt until I finished explaining the credentials I had sent Maria. "So," she said, leaning back, "let me get this straight. They have a term sheet based on a demo they can't actually run, and they need you to sign over the IP before Friday so they can legally accept the money." "Exactly. The term sheet is contingent on IP verification." "And you haven't signed this." She tapped the printout of the contract I had brought. "Hell no." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator seeing a wounded gazelle. "Okay, Emma, here's what we're going to do. Do not sign that. But don't tell them you're not signing it. Delay, say your printer is broken, say you're having it notarized. Stall until the party." "Why?" "Because right now, if you refuse, they might cancel the party. They might try to spin a story to Matthew that you're a disgruntled employee holding the code hostage. We need them to commit to the Frau. Publicly. We need them to stand on that stage, in front of witnesses, and claim they own something they don't. And then, Sarah said, tapping her finger on the table, we prove they don't. Do you have proof of creation?" I pulled out my laptop. I have the Git logs dating back 3 years. I have the provisional patent filing from 6 months ago in my name. I have emails to Andrew from last year where I explain the architecture to him because he didn't understand it. "Perfect," Sarah said. "Here's the plan. You're going to draft a counter document. A consulting agreement. Hide it in a stack of technical specs you send them. Make it look boring. But in the fine print, state that you retain 100% ownership of the IP until a payment of $400,000 is made. If they sign that without reading it, which they will because they're arrogant, you have them on the hook for the full investment amount." "They'll never sign it," I said. "They will if you package it right," Sarah said. "Tell them it's a standard technical compliance form that Matthew's team needs for the server security. Andrew won't read it. He doesn't know what a server is." I felt a spark of hope. It was risky, but it was better than being a victim. "One more thing," Sarah said, her voice dropping. "You need to find out what else they've lied about. If they lied to you, they lied to Matthew. Dig." I went home and dug. I used a script to scrape public records and social media. I found AMR Ventures, LLC. It had been registered 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. While Andrew was telling me to polish the demo, he was already building the company that would steal it. But then I found something juicier. I looked into Maria's brand strategy firm. It was dissolved 6 months ago for failure to pay taxes. I looked into Andrew's investments. He was being sued by 2 former partners for breach of contract on a real estate deal. They weren't just greedy, they were desperate. They needed that $400,000 not to launch my company, but to pay off their debts. My seed money was their bailout fund. I sat back in my chair. The betrayal was absolute. They weren't stealing my future to build theirs, they were stealing it to cover up their past failures. My phone buzzed. "Andrew, Emma, where is the signed IP transfer?" Matthew's lawyers are asking. Don't make me come over there. I typed back, my fingers flying. Me, sorry dad, printer jammed, I'm going to Kinko's in the morning. Also, I'm sending over a technical compliance form. It's just server specs for the security audit. Matthew's tech guy will need it to verify the encryption. Can you just sign off on it so I can attach it to the transfer? It's just technical jargon. 5 minutes later. Andrew, fine, send it. I drafted the document. I buried the ownership clause on page 4, paragraph 12, sandwiched between server latency protocols and data redundancy standards. Clause 12.4. The undersigned acknowledges that all intellectual property, source code, and algorithmic structures remain the sole property of the developer Emma, until a transfer fee of $400,000 USD is remitted in full. Failure to remit payment renders any usage of the software as unauthorized and subject to immediate termination. I sent it. 10 minutes later, I got a notification. Document signed by Andrew R. He hadn't read a word. I had the trap. Now I just needed them to walk into it. Thursday, one day before the launch. The pressure was mounting. Maria had called me 3 times to ask how to make the AI run faster for the demo. I told her I was optimizing the backend and that it would be lightning fast by Friday. I decided to go to the venue. The launch was being held at a rented event space downtown, a trendy, industrial chic warehouse with exposed brick and skylights. Andrew had clearly spent a chunk of his own dwindling cash on the deposit to impress Matthew. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I walked in through the catering entrance wearing a black hoodie and carrying a clipboard. No one stopped me. I found Andrew and Maria near the stage, arguing. The catering bill is how much? Andrew was hissing, his face red. It has to be high-end, Dad, Maria shot back. Matthew is bringing his partners. We need to look successful to be successful. We don't have the money yet, Maria. If the funds don't clear by Monday, the check for this place bounces. They'll clear. Emma sent the IP docs this morning. I saw the email. I stepped out from behind a stack of chairs. Actually, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty hall, I didn't send the IP docs. I sent a corrupted PDF. I'm sure you noticed. They both whipped around. Andrew's face went from red to pale. Maria looked like a deer caught in headlights if the deer was wearing Laubautins. Emma, Andrew said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. What are you doing here? I came to see where my money is being spent, I said, walking toward her. Them, I didn't feel small anymore. I felt tall. Nice venue, a bit pricey for a company that doesn't own its own product. We own it, Maria snapped, stepping forward. She tried to muster her usual dominance, but her eyes darted nervously. You built it for us. You were an employee. That's how it works. I was never an employee, Maria. I never signed a contract. I never received a paycheck. I was a freelancer working on spec. And since the client, you hasn't paid, the product belongs to me. Andrew stepped between us. He put on his reasonable dad face, the one he used right before he screwed someone over. Emma, stop this. You're being emotional. We're a family. We're doing this for us. Once the company takes off, you'll be taken care of. I promise. Like you promised to introduce me to Matthew, I asked. Like you promised to help me. I did help you, Andrew shouted, his control slipping. I gave you the idea. I told you logistics was the future. You told me to do something with computers, I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. I built the brain, Andrew. You just want to wear the skin. I pulled out my phone. I know about the debts, Dad. I know about the lawsuit. I know Maria's branding firm went under. You need Matthew's money to pay off your mistakes. This isn't about my success. It's about your survival. The silence that followed was heavy. Andrew looked like I had slapped him. Maria looked terrified. You won't say anything, Andrew said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage. Because if you do, you destroy your sister. Do you want that? Do you want to be the reason she fails? She's already failed, Dad, I said. She's pitching a product she doesn't understand to an investor she's lying to. Failure is already baked in. The only question is whether I go down with the ship. If you ruin this, Maria hissed, her face twisting into something ugly, I will never forgive you. I will tell everyone you're crazy. I'll tell them you stole the code from me. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. See who can explain the algorithm in front of a whiteboard, you or me. I turned to leave. Emma, Andrew yelled. If you don't sign those papers by tomorrow morning, you are out of this family. I mean it. No inheritance. No contact. You're dead to us. I stopped at the door. I looked back at them, two desperate grifters in a fancy warehouse, standing on a stage built on lies. I'm not signing Dad, I said, and I'm not dead, I'm just logging off. I walked out. My heart was pounding, but for the first time in my life, it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. They were scared. They knew I had the leverage. But they still didn't think I would actually do it. They banked on my guilt. They banked on family. They were wrong. Friday morning, the day of the launch party. The text messages started at 6:00 a.m. Andrew, Emma, please be reasonable. We can renegotiate. 10%, just sign the transfer. Maria, I'm sorry, I yelled. I'm just so stressed. Please, Em, I need this. Don't do this to me. Andrew, if you don't send the signed docs by noon, I'm calling the police. I'll tell them you hacked our servers. Threats, begging, more threats. The cycle of abuse in text form. I ignored them all. I was busy. I had taken the day off from my day job, which I still had, because Logicor hadn't paid me a dime. I sat in my apartment with Sarah, who had come over with bagels and a terrifyingly organized binder. Okay, Sarah said, sipping her coffee. We have the signed technical compliance form where Andrew admits you own the IP until paid. We have the proof of your provisional patent. We have the chat logs where Maria asks you for the login credentials, proving she doesn't have access. Is it enough? I asked. It's enough to bury them in court, Sarah said. But we're not going to court yet. We're going to the party. We are. Yes, Matthew Sterling is a man of integrity, right? That's his brand. Yeah, ethical capital. Then he deserves to know he's being defrauded. But we can't just email him. Andrew intercepts his emails. We have to do it in person. At the launch. I felt a knot form in my stomach. You want me to cause a scene? No, Sarah said. I want you to save the investor. You're not the angry daughter. You're the whistleblower. The plan was simple. The party started at 7:00 p.m. The live demo was scheduled for 8:00 p.m. At 7:30 p.m., Maria would be mingling. Andrew would be holding court. I checked the server logs on my laptop. Maria had logged in 17 times in the last hour using the fake credentials. She was frantically clicking around, probably realizing that nothing was actually connected. Maria text, Emma, the dashboard isn't updating. It just says simulation mode. How do I turn it off? Help me. Maria text, Emma, pick up the phone. Andrew text, you ungrateful little brat. You are ruining everything. I watched the texts roll in like a tick. Tape of their panic. They're realizing the gun is empty, I told Sarah. Good, she said. Now let's go show them who holds the bullets. We dressed for war. I wore a sharp navy suit, the one I should have worn to the pitch meeting. Sarah wore her courtroom armor. We arrived at the warehouse at 7:45 p.m. The place was packed. Tech journalists, local influencers, potential clients. There was an open bar, a DJ, and a massive screen behind the stage displaying the Logicor logo. My logo. We slipped in. The security guard was a kid looking at his phone. He didn't even check the guest list. I scanned the room. I saw Andrew near the bar, looking sweaty and manic, laughing too loudly at something a man in a gray suit said. I saw Maria near the stage, frantically typing on an iPad. She looked like she was about to vomit. And there, in the center of the room, was Matthew Sterling. He looked calm, composed, radiating wealth. He was talking to a small circle of people, holding a glass of water. There he is, I whispered to Sarah. Go, she said. I'll handle the interference if Andrew tries to stop you. I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. I started walking toward Matthew. Andrew spotted me when I was 20 feet away. His eyes went wide. He dropped his glass. It shattered, but the noise of the party drowned it out. He started shoving his way through the crowd toward me. Emma, he barked, but the music covered his voice. I kept moving. I was 10 feet from Matthew. Andrew lunged, grabbing my arm. Get out now. Let go, Andrew, Sarah said, stepping in and jamming a manila folder into his chest. Or I'll have you arrested for assault and fraud right here. Andrew faltered, looking at Sarah, then the folder, then me. Who is this? My lawyer, I said. I pulled my arm free and stepped into Matthew's circle. Mr. Sterling, I said. He turned. He had kind eyes, but they were sharp. He looked at me, then at the commotion behind me. Yes. My name is Emma, I said, my voice clear and steady. I'm Andrew's daughter, and I'm the one who actually built Logicor. Matthew's eyebrows shot up. I thought Maria was the founder. Maria is a marketing strategist, I said. She doesn't know Python from a pretzel, and in 10 minutes, she's going to try to run a demo on a system she doesn't have the keys to. Andrew tried to intervene. Matthew, ignore her. She's unstable. She's just jealous of her sister. Matthew held up a hand, silencing Andrew. He looked at me. He looked at the resemblance between me and Andrew. Go on, Matthew said. The system she's about to demo is a dummy interface, I said. It's not real. The real software is on a private server that only I control. If you give them that check, you are buying a slide deck and a lawsuit, not a company. Matthew looked at Andrew. Is this true? No, she's lying, Andrew sputtered. We own it, we have the papers. Do you? Matthew asked softly. At that moment, the lights dimmed. The DJ cut the music. A spotlight hit the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Maria's voice boomed over the speakers. She was standing at the podium, forcing a smile that looked like a rictus of terror. Welcome to the future of logistics. Welcome to Logicor. Applause. Now, Maria said, her voice trembling slightly, let's show you what this baby can do. She turned to the massive screen. The dashboard appeared. I'm going to initiate a live inventory sync with a warehouse in New Jersey, she announced. She tapped the sync button on her iPad. On the screen, a loading bar appeared. It spun and spun and spun. Then giant red letters flashed across the screen, 50 feet high. Access denied. Unauthorized user. System lockdown initiated. The crowd gasped. Maria frantically tapped the screen. Just technical difficulties, 1 second. Then a new text box appeared on the big screen. It wasn't a system error. It was a message I had programmed to trigger if an unauthorized user tried to force a sync. Property of Emma R demo version expired. Please contact the developer for licensing. The silence in the room was absolute. I looked at Matthew. He was reading the screen. Then he looked at Andrew. Unstable, Matthew asked, his voice like ice. Andrew opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I smiled. The trap had snapped shut. The silence in the warehouse stretched for what felt like an eternity, heavy and suffocating. All eyes were glued to the screen, where the words property of Emma R glowed in stark, unforgiving white against the red background. Maria was frozen on stage. The clicker fell from her hand, clattering loudly on the floorboards. She looked small, stripped of her curated persona, just a terrified woman standing in front of a lie that had grown too big to contain. Andrew, standing next to me, seemed to shrink. He wasn't the booming patriarch anymore. He was a man watching his house of cards catch fire. Ray. Matthew, Andrew stammered, his voice cracking. I can explain, it's a glitch. She's hacking us right now. Matthew Sterling didn't even look at him. He was looking at the screen, then at me. He took a slow sip of his water, his expression unreadable. Then, he set the glass down on a high-top table with a deliberate clink. "Andrew," Matthew said, his voice not loud, but carrying effortlessly in the quiet room. "I've known you for 20 years. I know when you're selling, and I know when you're drowning." He turned to me. "You're Emma." "Yes," I said. "And this," he gestured to the screen, "this is your doing." "It's my software," I said calmly. "It's protecting itself." Matthew nodded slowly. He walked past Andrew, ignoring him completely, and stepped up onto the low stage. The crowd parted for him. He took the microphone from the stand, gently moving Maria aside. She didn't resist. She just stared at the floor, tears finally spilling over her perfect makeup. "Ladies and gentlemen," Matthew said, addressing the room, "it appears we have a slight change in programming tonight. The presentation you just saw was unauthorized." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones were out. People were recording. "However," Matthew continued, turning to look at me in the crowd, "it seems the actual founder is in the building. Emma, would you care to join me up here?" My heart hammered against my ribs. Sarah nudged me forward. "Go," she whispered. "Finish it." I walked up the steps. The spotlight hit me, blinding and hot. I stood next to Matthew. "Do you have the key?" Matthew asked quietly off mic. I nodded. I pulled the encrypted USB drive from my pocket. "Show them," he said. I walked over to the laptop connected to the projector. I unplugged Maria's iPad and plugged in my drive. I typed in my biometric key. The screen flickered. The red warning vanished. In its place, the real Logicore dashboard appeared, sleek, dark mode, pulsating with live data streams. It wasn't the static simulation Maria had. It was alive. "This is Logicore," I said into the microphone. My voice shook for a second, then steadied. I knew this code. This was my home. It's a heuristic learning model for supply chain optimization. What you're seeing right now is a live feed of the port of Los Angeles traffic data, which I'm using as a benchmark. I ran a query. The system instantly optimized a theoretical route, saving 14% on fuel costs. The numbers crunched in real time on the screen. The tech crowd in the room murmured in appreciation. This was real. This was magic. I looked down at Andrew. He was pale, sweating profusely. He tried to step forward to say something, but two of Matthew's security detail quietly stepped in front of him. "This software," I continued, looking directly at my father, "was built over 3 years of sleepless nights. It wasn't built by a brand strategy firm. It wasn't built by a venture capitalist. It was built by an engineer, and it is not for sale to thieves." I unplugged the drive. The screen went black. "Thank you," I said. I walked off the stage. Matthew followed me down. He stopped in front of Andrew. "The deal is dead, Andrew," Matthew said. "And so is our friendship. Don't contact me again." "But the money," Andrew wheezed. "I spent the deposit." "Send the bill to AMR Ventures," Matthew said coldly. "Oh, wait. That's a shell company with no assets, isn't it?" He turned to me. "Emma, call my office on Monday. I'd like to discuss a Series A round, directly with you." I looked at my father and sister one last time. Maria was sobbing on a chair. Andrew was staring into the middle distance, ruined. "I'll think about it," I said to Matthew. I grabbed Sarah's arm. "Let's go get a burger." We walked out of the warehouse, leaving the chaos behind us. The fallout was swift and brutal, exactly as Sarah had predicted. The launch party disaster was all over the tech blogs by the next morning. Venture capital horror story, founder exposé live on stage. The video of the Access DNID screen went viral. Andrew tried to spin it. He gave an interview claiming it was a misunderstanding and that I was a rogue employee. But the internet is a ruthless detective. People found the public records. They found the timeline. They found the patent filing in my name. His reputation, already hanging by a thread, disintegrated. His other creditors, smelling blood in the water, descended. He lost his condo. He lost his car. He moved into a small rental on the outskirts of the city. Maria fared worse in a way. Her social standing, her currency, was worthless. She was branded a fraud. She deleted her Instagram. She moved to a different state to live with an aunt, working at a retail boutique under her middle name. I didn't sue them. I didn't have to. The humiliation was the punishment. 3 weeks later, I sat in Matthew Sterling's actual office, not the lobby, but the boardroom. "The diligence checks out," Matthew said, closing a folder. "The tech is brilliant, Emma, truly." "Thank you," I said. "The offer is $2 million for 20% equity. You remain CEO. You retain majority voting rights. And we add a clause that no family members can be employed by the company without unanimous board approval." I smiled. You read my mind. "I have one question," Matthew said, leaning forward. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you wait until the party?" I looked out the window at the skyline. "Because I needed to know if I could do it," I said. "I needed to know if I could stand up to him. If I had just emailed you, I would have still been his daughter, hiding behind a screen, walking onto that stage. That was me becoming the CEO." Matthew nodded. "Fair enough." I signed the papers. That night, I went to dinner with Sarah. I paid off her student loans as a consulting fee. We drank cheap wine and laughed until our sides hurt. I got a text from Andrew later that night. "Andrew, I heard you got funded. Congratulations. I hope you're happy. You destroyed your family for money." I looked at the text. The old Emma would have felt guilty. The old Emma would have tried to explain, to apologize, to fix it. The new Emma, the CEO of Logicor, just saw a liability. I didn't reply. I blocked the number. I put my phone down and looked at the waiter bringing dessert. "2 spoons, please," I said. The code was clean, the bugs were fixed, and the system was finally, perfectly secure.